My name is Robin Raskin. I spent the first half of my life as a journalist talking about PCs on your desktop, basically, and I've watched this evolution from PCs to laptops to mobile phones to now the next frontier, our bodies. If you read Mary Meeker's study this morning, Mary came out with her internet, State of the Internet, and she said something really interesting. She said that with each computing platform, ownership grows tenfold. So which means you had PCs, laptops come in, ownership tenfold, tablets, tenfold more. You can extrapolate that to wearables, and we're in for something really big. You're starting to see all of the things here today, and you are a most fashionable audience from where I'm sitting. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce 4 really different panelists, whose names aren't up here either, because my drive got broken a moment ago. But I'm Robin Raskin, living in digital times. You're going to hear from Syuzi Pakhchyan. Syuzi runs FashioningTech. I urge you to look at it. It's a blog that keeps you updated on the intersection of fashion and technology. Then you're going to hear from Franco Lodato. If you haven't heard of him already, I suggest you check out his book and you look at some of the work that he's doing in industrial design and wearables. You will hear from Richard Kerslake from Intel. Richard's in charge of the New Devices Group, and hear about the Make It Wearable challenge that Intel's doing. And then you will hear from one of the designers whose work you'll see tonight, Angela Dale. She works with Make Fashion, which is a collaborative fashion technology collective where the idea is to raise awareness for what's going on in the wearable market. So we're going to look at it from a bunch of different areas. Each one of the panelists is going to take 3 minutes to kind of define their work and what they're doing. I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then I'm going to open it up to you for what I hope will be a really stimulating discussion about a pretty exciting area. So with no further ado, you can see my slides there, I'm going to introduce Syuzi Pakhchyan to talk about FashioningTech, and you can just stand here, and I will run your slides. Franco, this is your machine. You want to come up here? And do you want to switch to, there we go. Okay, perfect. Okay,
thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Syuzi Pakhchyan, and I'm an experienced designer working in the intersection of fashion and technology. My role really is in trying to merge these 2 very disparate worlds of fashion and technology, worlds that have a very different vocabulary, a very different way of speaking, and certainly a very different value system and way of working. Next slide. So I want to start off really quickly about talking about, this could be an entire presentation, but I want to mention a couple of key points about what I think the tech world can learn from fashion. And one is to develop a signature style. We're seeing a lot of wearable gadgets being developed, and they all look the same. This is an incredibly important thing when you're designing for objects that are so intimate and they have to be worn on the body. Secondly, materials matter. Think about the materials you're using when you're designing your products. Not everything has to be made out of injected molded silicone or rubber. And lastly, and this is and quite a bit more importantly, I think tell a story. The fashion industry knows how to do this incredibly well. And the story is not about functionality. Most of your users or your audience don't really care so much about the functionality as much as they care about how these products are going to change their lives or change their behaviors. So let me show a few projects that I've worked on recently. I've been working with a wearable technology company in the Bay Area called It Wearables, and they make this lovely activity tracker that I'm wearing. And with them, what I was trying to do is create a line of accessories in order to change basically a device, a wearable device, into something that becomes a lifestyle product. So the first thing we did is we created some socks and T-shirts, something really simple, but it allowed people to use the garment, whether you're a tennis player or a cyclist, and it turned something like a garment into an actual accessory for a wearable tech device. And then the next thing that we did recently was to start to use the metaphor of jewelry. How can technology be something that you would want to transition from day to night, something you would want to wear at an event, something you could wear throughout the day, something that is beautiful so you don't forget to wear it. So I'm going to just conclude really quickly by saying that I implore that everyone stop thinking about just the wrists and just the face, that we need to move. We have a whole, this is finite real estate here, and we've got the whole space of the body to explore. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Syuzi. Okay, and next up you're going to hear from Frank. I'm going to let him run his own slides, since we subbed his machine at the last moment.
So, good afternoon. So, what I've been doing, my background is in industrial design and biomimicry, biology, structures, and all the different organisms. And I have done this for about 25 years. So the important part that I see that connect is what you learn from nature, and is actually analog, is the whole connectivity that actually interconnect, seamless, everything. The best result outside is represented in a long term, but the activity and how that correlate with the environment and the surrounding is what is interesting. So this is a project that seems very simple. It's actually an ice axe. It was inspired completely in multifunctionality of a bird, the woodpecker. This ice axe has 7 patents in a hammer. So innovation is also important. So you can borrow from nature. It's not actually copying, it's understanding. This idea, again, have an interesting, subtle, beauty, and that's what you see in nature. So copying and trying to mimic that. Another experience I've done is also understanding ecosystems. This particular car has about 250 technologies, was designed in 2005 for a company called Maserati. And the work here was to, how can you replicate seamless connectivity in interconnected environments where you have a variety of different organisms and things happening. Imagine a city. So the car was embedded with routers, proximity sensors. This is 2004. So the idea is nature as a model and as a principle to add connectivity in all the different ways in how to interact. So using these, again, we develop different wearables. You can see the lady has, glasses, projector screens, the key at the time. Again, 2004 was just, a wireless wearable key. There was no connection with the car, it was by proximity and so on. So the next step we're doing now is looking at simple cell, how neural networks work. So the whole goal is, can you actually conceive everything that finalize with the push of a button? What is what you want to do when you touch one time? So cells work that way. So it's a paradigm that, again, is hard to craft. But the whole idea is if you can expand the model of simplicity, as you can see in nature, and port it around. So she's mentioned many ways to wear these, depend really on how creative we are in putting it in your body or around your uses. So this particular application has a platform that starts with this sensor. As she said, you're going to see it this afternoon. And the whole goal of this is just to port it out to start gathering also data from your body, your heart rate and so on, and then move away from the idea. So the product is completely insignificant in terms of look, but the whole idea is, again, is replicable everywhere you want and wearable in a way that is seamless. So that's my talk.
Thanks. Okay, and next up we're going to hear from, thank you. And again, you will see the V-Alert this evening in our fashion show, and read Franco's book. He'll hold them up afterwards. Richard, do you want to run your slides? You want
whichever, yeah, maybe it would be great if you would, and there'd be one less chance for me to mess up.
Richard will tell you what's happening at Intel, which is pretty exciting.
Great, thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's certainly wonderful to be here. My name is Richard Kerslake, and I'm the Director of Strategy for the New Devices Group at Intel. So if I may, I'd like to just kind of explain a little bit about who we are and what we are. So the group was set up in the last 12 months to really understand how we can drive forward the new markets that are evolving and how they themselves will impact the next generation of microprocessors. So we're taking the assets of Intel, whether it's silicon, whether it's cloud, whether it's security. And we're wrapping around that a team of people that come from a whole range of walks of different life. We have people that have come from Apple, people that have come from Nike, people from industrial design, from hardware, software, from the cloud, silicon heads like myself. And we're building that together for a team to really understand how do we drive these technologies forward? How do we help the industry move forward? And we're looking at multiple spaces, but clearly wearables is one that's very much front and center of our mind. Why? And I think Robin very much touched upon it. It's a market today, it's relatively nascent, and that's a term we often use, yet it's tens of millions of units. It's not often in the world we talk about nascent and tens of millions all in the same sentence, but it's a tiny fraction of what it's capable of being. It's less than 5% of the population today. When we have 25%, then we can talk about success. So we're looking at this in multiple ways. Number one, we're actually trying to show the kind of technologies that are possible. And I brought a few kind of toys along just to illustrate them. These are earbuds that measure your heart rate while you're wearing them. Something very different here. You may be aware of the company Basis that Intel acquired relatively recently. They have some wonderful technology. They have sensors mounted in the back of the watch that actually lets you monitor your heart rate or your resistivity of your skin. It can look at your sleep patterns. And so it can start to provide real insight into how you as a machine operate. And then we realize, yeah, kind of us as a machine. I'm an old machine, unfortunately. But if you start looking at all the innovation centers that can take place, clearly Intel is not going to be the center of every single wearable moving forward. And so we have the Make It Wearable effort. And really at the heart of it are technologies like this. This is our Edison platform, and you can see it on the slide here. And with Edison, what we've done is combined a microprocessor, an atom design with wireless connectivity into a very small form factor. Why? Because we want people to be able to very quickly go from concept to idea to concept to demonstration and even to low volume production. So with that, if I may, and then maybe at the top that I just wanted to touch on there, we'll talk maybe in the speech about it, is understanding even how we charge all of these products. That's going to be a fundamentally important point. And then last but not least, again, as an engineer and acutely aware of standing on stage with the title fashion and me, those are two words that don't go together.
That goes for all of us.
Yeah, it's just, we are very sensitive to the fact that there are people out there who have lived and breathed this industry for decades, and that it will be partnerships between technology companies like Intel and those that truly understand the word beauty and how to deliver it. And we are working with Opening Ceremony as an example to develop a product which will be released later this year, and with Barney's, because we understand very much that a healthy ecosystem between the fashion industry and the technology industry is going to be vital to this success. So thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I'm just going to ask Angela Dale, whose designs you will see tonight, to come and speak a little bit about tackling things from the fashion side first, the technology side second, and what motivates you in your work. And you can take the stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Dale, and my background is in fine art and theater, and I design and build costumes and create one-of-a-kind textiles. I first used technology in 2002 when I was working on a film project, and we incorporated LEDs and animatronics into some costumes for a film. And then in 2012, I designed some costumes for the 100th anniversary of the Calgary Stampede. We have a big outdoor grandstand show there. And I was asked by the director to create something a little bit different. So we did 25 costumes that incorporated LEDs. And it sort of reacquainted me with the whole idea of using technology in costuming. And in the course of doing this project, I met some really interesting people that started Make Fashion, which Robin mentioned earlier, which is a collective in Calgary all about bringing fashion and technology together. And so the group I was working with on the grandstand costumes suggested that I design a piece for Make Fashion, and we could use it as an R&D project and further explore the use of microcontrollers with LEDs. So I did that, and in 2012, my chameleon dress showcased at the Make Fashion show, and that's the dress I brought with me to show here later on today at the show we're doing tonight. And I guess what I love about using technology is, for me as a costume designer, it's all about trying to create magic. And I like to take technology and incorporate it into my garments where you don't know it's there. And what's really important to me is that the actual outfit stands on its own as an interesting piece, and it's well designed, and that when the technology turns on and kicks in, that there's a whole other element layer for the viewer, so that the audience or the viewer can look at this outfit and go, oh my God, that's amazing. And it takes you sort of somewhere else. And that's something that I sort of approach it from more of an artistic point of view. In terms of building outfits that incorporate technology, my biggest challenge is always the power requirements in terms of batteries, and we've come a long way since the first time I used technology in 2002. Today, I mostly use live poly batteries, and every year it seems like they get smaller and the controllers use less power, so everything is scaling down, which makes it much easier to embed it in terms of wearables. The other thing that I find kind of frustrating is I'm often using LED strips that aren't really made for wearables. They're not that flexible. They have stress points on them. So my biggest challenge is finding a way to create circuitry that is going to work on a body. Person's moving in this outfit, the wires are going to bend, and if they're bending a lot and repetitively, there's going to be issues. So in the future, I'm really interested in exploring printing flexible circuit boards where I can incorporate my technology onto a fabric base. And I think with what's happening in the world right now and what I've been sort of following in terms of textile production, I think we're not that far away from having readily accessible technology that could work much better for wearables. Thank you. A little book.
So you've gotten a broad background. I want to put one other thought in your head, and that's this notion of, how many heard Bob Scoble this morning talk about contextual computing? There's something else that I think we're about to enter called the era of mass customization, where yes, you can get your Nike sneakers or your Reeboks or your Adidas, but you're going to design them and put your personal imprint on them. You're going to order your own designer cutlery and dishes from your 3D printer, pick them up locally if you want. And so you're going to start to see mass customization where these things that we all want are there, customized for you. So taking this idea as simplicity, elegance, the journalist in me would tell you, like, there's nothing simple and elegant about fashion and technology right now. You're either hitting the side of your head, or when we first started doing fashion shows, we had 4 engineers per outfit, basically, just to keep it running, and about all the AA batteries that ever existed. So what I want to ask the panelists, and then I want to bring you in. So let's talk tech for a minute. What do you see as the major catalyst on the tech platforms that have helped us spur this next gen of wearable computing? Like, just sort of list of what technologies are fueling this?
Well, I think things are just, the sensors are getting smaller, things are just getting smaller and faster, and so as things get smaller, it becomes more reasonable to start to embed it into, like, our garments, our bodies, into smaller devices, and rather than just having a phone. So I think it's an shrinking of the shrinking of the electronics, and the increasing of the computational capacity. Yeah.
And do you still see the mobile phone as command central?
Well, right now it is, because all these wearable devices, they basically, it's a one-way communication between the device and then the phone. There aren't I can't really think of too many examples where there are actually multiple devices communicating. Like, my shoes aren't talking to my T-shirt right now. You know, they're all independently talking to my phone. But that's as a result of, we need a lot of synchronization as to to develop an ecosystem of things to happen, and we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. No, it's good we're still in the equation, right? I mean, autonomous driving is probably the closest thing to things talking that we have no control of. So, Franco, looking at all of the technologies out there, what's enabling your platform, and what are you looking at as underlying?
Right now, what we are looking at is primarily the whole Internet of Things. So what she's describing is, the problem is the smartphone is not smart enough. So we think it is, but in the time frame of what we have developed, there are some functions that are not there. Content, very important. So there's a lot of information, but how do you do with that? What can you do with that? So it's interpreting. And then, the other part you mentioned is, I still believe so far what we have in the platform of the smartphone, as it's called, is important because give you base connectivity to the meanings of what you are trying to do. So we're using that right now. So we are using sensors that are gathering, your move and so on, and use the cell phone as a platform to interconnect with, the rest of your things. But there is a gap, and so the gap, as you see, even you see it 15 years ago, so the cloud wasn't there. Okay, now we have the cloud, but the things are not smart enough. I guess our colleague here is pushing for a new, capacitor or sensor and processor that will help allow that. But the reality is when you see it from within, that's why you see people still wearing these big machines. So getting closer to the reality that is seamless and simple, I think we're still in a verge of more changes and more evolution.
Right. So you've got the V-Alert, and the V-Alert with one touch can tell people that you are in trouble right
yes.
now.
The goal is, what can you do? We're trying to simplify. So what can you do to reduce the 4-10 steps, to make a phone call? Again, smartphones call themselves smart, but if you go to the analog, I work in the first phones, what they call the feature phones. And you still have to do several steps, put the button and so on, or programming it. So if you talk about evolution, I'm thinking in intelligence. So as nature things does, single cells, as I explained before, they can just capture simple information and send it, and it's the collective that makes the decision. So can we get there? Yes. There's a lot of programming, there's a lot of battery. Who was mentioning the battery? So it's a lot of other stuff, but we have to push the envelope. And I don't think the other part, as the analog with nature, you will be able to put everything together because it's a replication. So you have to pick which the best parts are. So the V-Alert is trying to do that. So one single press, what can you do in one push? What do you want to do?
Hold it up to the audience.
Yeah,
it's actually very beautiful.
I have, it's just very simple. Again, it's not really, the whole idea is simplifying. So, and, when you look around all the other wearables you are looking in this conference, it's still, again, the whole burden of, having to take it and put it on and so on. I think, again, it's a process to go. But if we analyze this from another approach, that's what I think the next step should be. So.
Okay, Richard, tell us why we should, what benefit we can get out of these new, more powerful, more consolidated chips.
Yeah, maybe just, if I may, broaden it a little bit. I think certainly the processor is part of the equation, but when you look at wearables, number one, what makes them wearable, obviously, is the intimacy with the body. So the sensor point, I think, is vital. We're going to see lots of innovation in the sensor space, whether it's on the biomed or whether it's in other areas. So I don't doubt for a second. Then there's the processing element. I was intimately involved in the early days of smartphones, and many of you may remember the early platforms were very generic in their processing capability. But very quickly over time, because of the power requirements, we started to see processing engines being integrated, and particularly for multimedia, video, photos, etc., that really were specialist processing blocks. Why? Because that's how you got the power down. That's how. And once you can get the power down, it gives you two options. You can always make the thing last longer in a battery, or you can make it smaller. So it just gives the designer flexibility. So I think that's vitally important, that we will see that in wearables. The output is an interesting one because the wearable is going to be smaller. Pretty much whatever you deal with, we're more constrained on how it gets the information, which I think leads to the cloud and the point you made earlier, where it's not about just getting information to us. It's about getting information that we care about at that instant in time. And so people talk about time-space optimization. It's about knowing what I need to know now, not tomorrow, not the next day, now. And I think the last element we need to think about is how we power these things. There's none of us that enjoy charging them. And if that hassle of charging is actually overweighs the value they deliver to us, they just end up in a drawer after a day or two, right? And I call it time to drawer. And it's how long it takes before you just stick it in the drawer and say, I'm done with it. And so we have to get creative about how we power them. Are we going to power them from our bodies? Are we going to use things like wireless charging? We've got to solve the power. So all of that, I think, needs to be brought together with the cloud equation to deliver something that we truly care about and delivers value. It's a long answer, simple question.
No, it's a really good answer. So, Angela, you told us the kinds of things you're looking for in your work, be it flexible fabrics, which are around the corner, and some of these things. So what materials at this moment, what have you seen out there that's really inspiring you? And what in particular can you talk to the AR folks about? How do you see the augmented and virtual realities being incorporated into some of the fashions?
Well, in terms of materials, one of the fabrics I've worked with is Luminex. It's a fiber optic fabric, and it's quite interesting. And in the course of using it, I've sort of started playing with fiber optics, and I really like the idea of. In my spare time, I dabble in textile arts. I do printing and dyeing and sort of fabric sculpture, and I like the idea of taking old craft and combining it with technology to create something that is sort of greater than the sum of the parts. So I want to play with, I've met some weavers recently, and I'd really like to try playing around with creating my own version of a fiber optic fabric where I'm using bigger fiber optics than the ones that are currently being used in the fibers, and just playing with sort of old style weaving but incorporating new technology into it, and also playing with some dyeing. And another area that I really like is digital printing. And I like, printing stuff that looks handcrafted. Like I usually start with a handcrafted idea and photograph it and then manipulate it on the computer and then go back to printing and have it digitally printed. And in playing with technology that way, I get to create things that I could never do with either one or the other. And I sort of really like that idea. I find it fascinating to take old tech or low tech and combine it with high tech and create something that's sort of a whole new genre. And so that's the kind of stuff that I really want to play with. And I guess for me, it's finding machinery and technology that I can use to do that that's actually affordable for someone who's like an artist.
Right. Hence the collectives become really important.
Yeah.
So Syuzi, you've been looking at across the board at things. Can you talk a little bit about the augmented and virtual reality meets fashion and what you've seen out there that's inspiring or intriguing?
In terms of what I've seen in the real world, a lot of the stuff you see with augmented reality and fashion actually is in the retail environment, in the space. But I haven't seen. Obviously there's Google Glass, and as the most predominant thing that everyone's is familiar with, but most people have this really negative reaction to glass because it isn't fashionable, and they have made some steps and efforts to make it not look like some 80s, futuristic sci-fi movie wearable. But I think, as I said, I think with a lot of these, anything that you're putting on your face is so intimate and so personal. I mean, that's why there's a million different styles of eyeglasses to fit your frame of your face, to fit your personality. It's such an important aspect that it's really, really hard to take this consumer electronics metaphor and do a one-size-fits-all. It just doesn't work. But I mean, Google Glass would be the most obvious answer there, where there is, some sort of virtual reality right in front of your face. That is an actual wearable.
But you bring out a good point. It's beyond just the wearables. It's the retail experience, and it's the, gee, I like that jacket. Let me take a photo of it and see where I can get it.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in the retail space. I mean, some of the stuff has actually already been explored like a decade ago, and it didn't work that well. But I think there is an opportunity here to re-engage with the audience in a way and explore any augmented reality in the retail sort of environment, whether it might not necessarily be something that's wearable, but... And we also need to be careful of making everything wearable right now, because wearable is such a hot topic. Everything doesn't need to be a wearable. It could be something that could be in the environment, or it could be an object, and add some sort of capacity and capability and to give it, some sort of magic that way.
I also think there's some common sense with clothing. Like, hello, we have all these wearables, but my jacket doesn't know when I'm cold or hot. I mean, how close are we to a solution that we can actually have something utilitarian like that?
Yes, that's it.
Right?
I think, the big deal is prediction. So what happened in our bodies is, again, for that example, you actually know that it's changing, you sense it, and then your skin makes some differences, and the hairs start pulling up, and you name it. So the whole idea of understanding what's gonna happen. So how you use that information is we return back again, and the problem is we're forcing sometimes, as you say, we're forcing this technology to get there, but we should just take it independently and see, okay, which is one of what they are doing, can we combine it? It's taking a different approach, I think, because it make the whole thing actually better in terms of evolution. Because what happened, coming from the past, working with Motorola, moving from the feature phones to the smartphones, as they call it, and I'm gonna stick on that all the time. So the thing is, it's just the interface. It's like with the computer. So you're using a mouse that looks like a mouse, and you're trying to do like your writing, but you're not really changing anything. So you're just taking a semantic of how you do it and put it with that technology. So if you do it in fashion, it's the same, no? So, but how can you revolutionize that? I'm not saying there's not invention there. It's just, can we think different? That's my point.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing now some of the interfaces. We were joking before that my Fitbit thinks I've walked 10,000 steps every time I go to the theater because of the interface. Yeah. So Richard, speaking to that, there's this, you talked a little bit about the cloud. So products are getting an amazing amount of data. Probably no point in history have products understood as much about the well body. Monitoring was always for sick people in a hospital. Right. Now everything's being monitored. How does that inform product design, or does it?
Does it help the product design? I think the data, or the fact that these devices are connected, certainly brings all kinds of avenues of information that we never would have had before. If you go back in time, clearly when you sold a product, frankly, you wouldn't know whether the person would or wouldn't use it, how often they would use it. So one, as a marketeer, you're going to learn an awful lot about how your customers use their products without indulging them in bunches of questionnaires, because you're actually going to be getting real-time feedback on, are they wearing the watch, are they using it to monitor their sleep? So I think there's lots of feedback there. I think, other points that were touched on, which I thought were very interesting in the conversation. Number one, I think Syuzi's point about one size not fitting all is interesting, in that if you look at the cell phone market, and Franco touched on it, you can name cell phone guys that have done 5 designs or 3 products. You can name some that might have 20. But if I went to any of the fashion houses that may be represented to here and said, look, guys, for the whole of the 2014 season, I give you 10 choices, that's it. Or I go to a watch brand and I say, you can have 10 designs. They would look at us like we were insane. This is like wearing handcuffs. So we have this complete difference between the engineers who would prefer to do one thing really, really well versus the industry of beauty, which is about giving something that reflects that individual person's needs. And whether that's the service or the view of how that product looks, that's, I think, an incredible challenge of how do you give flexibility and freedom to the designers, but still deliver a service that's of some value, because it was your original point. Why make it wearable in the first place? If it doesn't deliver something that's of value to you, then it's actually solved no problem at all. If it doesn't inform you of useful information, if it doesn't change your habits, then the 10,000 step thing is great, as long as it made you walk the 10,000. If you walk 2,000 every day and you're perfectly happy and you just say, I'm not going to change, then we've achieved nothing. We've got to change people's behaviors for it to be worth anything. We may as well have stayed in bed if that's all we're going to do. So data for data's sake, no use. Data that changes behavior or makes our lives easier, highly valuable.
It has to be meaningful.
It's got to be meaningful, and it's got to cause some change in behavior.
People also have to wear it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the main problem. If you don't wear it, you can't gather the data.
Ask them who has a wearable on of some sort. Wearables? I packed mine away for this conversation.
He's got a lot on.
Okay.
It's a fashion statement.
I mean, there's no doubt there's clear evidence, and I think we're all acutely aware that many of us buy them. You know, I bought one for my wife, and I think she set the world record of 2 days before she put it in the drawer.
Right.
And she basically argued it didn't really tell her anything she didn't know before she started, which is she really should get out and do some more exercise. So it just really irritated her. So, I mean, you know, we've got to get people to wear them for them to deliver value.
Yeah, but it's also the bubble gum paradigm, no? So if it doesn't have meaning, you just take it, chew it, throw it. So the problem is, you know, the complexity of the things that interact there. So the energy is a major deal. I mean, you tap on that, is complicated. You know, the thing is we want the device to do many things, and I believe they should be doing only the things that are necessary. So this is how also you can interpret and use the approach to make something different. Because otherwise, you know, like when you take a cell phone, you know, you don't need to do all the calculations and the trip to the moon and all the, you know, you just need to make a phone call.
Right.
So why we need to put all that? And, you know, it's a debate between engineering and, because I mean, just because it can do it doesn't have to be there.
But you're right about the different SKUs. And, you know, when you look at the wearables, I was in Nigeria last week, and I took the Philip bracelet with me, which has GPS and cellular location and a Dick Tracy talking phone for kids that are too young to use a cell phone. And I said to them, for $40, you could have avoided 200 missing girls for $40 a girl with technology like this. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's the older, frailer person who has a beautiful necklace now, not an ugly personal emergency device, to keep their loved ones informed. So I think what you're hearing the panel say is sort of this continuum of personalization of this concept of wearable.
I think if we're going to succeed in wearables, it's funny, wearables usually in about 7 seconds turns into the word fitness. I mean, it just sort of migrates there.
Do it.
Why? Because it's kind of the one area where we've, it's been, quote, successful. And, the irony is that if you actually go out there and look at the statistics, and these are not ones that our company assembled, they're public ones, over 60% of people who buy fitness devices are, overweight or obese. So it's actually people who want to be fit. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'd like to be fit as well. Yeah. But, we kind of compartmentalize it. And really, the wearables, when we actually start to master this technology and deliver value, should be with us through all aspects of our life, adding value from our babies to children, for security, to adulthood. And if you're 24 years old and you can run a 4-minute mile, rock on. Let's monitor you as a star athlete out on the field. When you're in middle age, and maybe you really should be doing more exercise or eating a little bit less or whatever, or you should be more in contact with your boss, let's deliver the value. And when your parents are aging and you're a long way away from them and you want to know that they're safe, that they're looking after themselves, that they're eating, that they're doing the things they should be doing, let's deliver the technology that gives them that. And so they're all wearables, and they're just multiple facets of the same base technology. And so again, it's yet another SKU. It's the SKU of life. It's not just the SKU of vision, of fashion.
So let's turn it over to the audience. We have a wonderful volunteer here who is going to walk around with the microphone. Any questions? We have one from our most wearable, wearable guy.
Is there a wearable?
The most representative.
What's your favorite wearable since you've got the 10 on at least?
It's actually a phrase I coined, which is little data meets big data. That's what you're talking about. And that's collecting it. What I do is I collect the data and analyze all of them. My question for Mr. Edison is, I've been tracking Edison since November. When is Edison coming out?
Later this year, in the late summer, you will have Edison. So I talked to the guy who runs it, who's brilliantly named Ed. And I just want you to know how hard it was to find a guy called Ed to run Edison. But we found one. And so Ed Ross confirms that, yes, a little bit later in the summer, you will have Edison.
So we're talking July or August, or?
I couldn't possibly comment, sir.
Summer.
But it's not. Those 2 months are representative of late summer, so I don't think they're bad choices either.
It is kind of funny that the Edison-Tesla thing is resurrecting itself here, though. Yeah. There's Tesla out on the show floor. So, any other questions?
A question about the fashionable aspect and the fact that certain dresses can be worn which light up and sparkle and give off tweet messages and so on. And how close to these are? How close are these to being adopted, not just by very rich celebrity pop stars and fashion icons, but by normal people who wear them for a night out in the club? And how close? I mean, can you put them in the tumble dryer and wash them and dry them currently, or are they not really washable, although they are wearable?
Can we wash yours?
Well, the dress that's showing today, the wearable, the way it's designed and constructed is the lighting layer is removable. So there's sort of a sandwich system. So I can take the lighting layer off entirely, and there's a layer next to the body and a layer on the outside that are washable. So I can wash it, and the lighting layer. Far away from, having things much easier for the average consumer.
There are companies out there like Huge Circuit who've been making these things and trying for close to a decade to get them out to the market. So my question to you is, do we really want tweeting dresses? It's a use case scenario. I don't think the mass public really wants a tweeting dress right now, So I think there is a desirability, unless your question was, when are we going to move towards the e-textile end and move away from the wearable gadgets? So I think that is happening. We're there's a lot of research going on in trying to integrate some of the stuff into, at least the sensor end of it, into fibers.
And again, fitness companies are really leading a lot of this with things that take out the fitness monitoring part, wash your shirt. Hexoskins is doing it, Under Armour is doing it. There's a lot of activity in the fitness space. There's a lot of activity in the 3D space, although last year I made myself a pair of 3D shoes. They cost $900 to print. I slipped on the runway, and they broke. But so if you've ever tried to walk on plastic, it's not that easy. So there's some just daily things that need to change. On the other hand, if you want a little bling, there's some great $40 illuminated shirts off of battery packs. We use them all the time. Cummerbunds for the men. So you're starting, and yes, it's personal, and yes, what is it, Dita Van Tress, is that her name? The 3D. Nobody can ever wear that dress again because she's like size -0. But this idea of customizing a dress for yourself is already online in so many different ways. And I think just incorporating technology in it is right around the corner, if not happening now.
Yeah, I think also for what they mentioned of the tweeting, maybe it can be an interesting marketing tool also, no? Because you can also not tell about something, personal or something promoted, or it would be nice,
But we don't want walking.
And let you glow if I want to see, whatever. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, from the standpoint of usability.
So tonight you'll see. I'll give you a little teaser. Drum pants, where you play the drums on your thighs, but the wearable is removable, so you can wear it on any pants, wear it on your pocketbook. You'll see NeuroSky's brainwave technology embedded into some fashion. So literally, if you're embarrassed, it's going to show on your collar. So wearing your emotions on your sleeve is going to take on a whole new meaning when you see some of these wearables. And yes, there's a lot of experimentation, but I think there's wonderful conversation. And to me, it's personally gratifying to see the fashion world and the tech world. And as a U.S. citizen and a New Yorker, I watched us give up the fashion industry once as an industry because we weren't quick enough to retool and understand what was going on. And so to see the ideas of mass customization, the ideas of one-off fashion, the ideas of integrating technology and innovation is where I think we have huge opportunity to regain some of that and create jobs at a local level. Any last thoughts?
Yeah.
Thank you. If I may start with a remark for the previous question, I think the people on stage are artists, and I don't think it really matters if you can sell anything the people here are making. I mean, they should invoke new ideas, I guess. And that's actually where my question is about. In the beginning, we saw the woodpecker. So you had like this type of design. And when we think about design, it's constantly digital design. There's like so many axiomas we're actually, thinking in and mentioning. And you guys, as in being artists, I was actually hoping to hear something like different. For example, the example that I gave, for example, with the woodpecker, it's how can this change, like in a way that is not digital technology, but other ways of technology. And for example, that question about like the button, like actually, what is the answer to that question? What can you actually do with one button? Where can we go? And how can we lose the axiomas of the Internet of Things through a feeding information to the Internet of Things instead of receiving and creating new designs and solve wicked problems through this information network?
Okay.
That was a mouthful.
It's a complex question. I think what is missing in the whole content is, I purposely wanted to show an analog, simple design. There is beauty there. There is trend. If you compare that with, let's talk even a simple car. So there's always 4 wheels, and you have, something to drive it, and the engine can be whatever. You can change it. But it's the purpose of the design, no? So what is missing, I believe, is to get deeper into those analog, simple details. So what you're describing on the axioms and what we are pushing for this single push of a button is just to try to get to basics. What do you really want to do when you actually get one of these devices? What is the functions you want? Forget about how they get made. It's about the meaning of what do you want? And there is plenty of software and capability and power, to make this move, but we are focusing on using that to showcase instead of getting into the end of the equation, that is, what is the purpose? So somehow it's really on us. You talk about the artists or the technologies, is how we want to move this. We are the one who create trend. You people is the one who actually select and design if that trend is valid or not. And they can die in short term or continue going. So tools like the one I show, by the way, that was designed in 1989 and is still for sale. Again, it's an analog tool, but what is the comparison to a technology tool that you can do? I think, again, it's just something that you can just push. So that's kind of like the paradigm of what we're pushing out. Sorry? Oh yeah, there is technology, but it's underlined, so you don't need to you don't need to showcase what is underneath. That's the big deal here, because to become fashion, there's no way to package technology. We create these dreams around in how they should be portrayed in order to actually define the users what they have. So again, that's my interpretation. When you look at technology is everything. I was sharing nature as a model. That's amazing, complex, technological, integration of physics and chemics, and you don't see it. You see only one thing. The flower you see in that moment is the perfect. Only happened that in a certain time. So you're talking also with time frames. So can we move that into, as you're describing, a fast-paced, custom-made things? I believe yes, because we have to look for the economical side. But the whole point is simplifying.
I agree with you. The whole invisible technology is at the root of it, right? As long as it looks and smells like technology, there's a certain group of us that were going to be turned off by it, and it usually doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with fashion and beauty, not always. And so the question is, how do you make it truly invisible?
Or how do you combine high-tech, low-tech, high-touch, low-touch, and into a solution? So look at Airbnb, just on the web. You had people looking for hotels. Hotels had a monopoly. Somebody comes in and says, here's the web, and so it's this idea of a pocket here or a Velcro piece here, maybe the answer that we're looking for combined with the technology to make it seamless. And I think you're seeing that, Angela, in your work in spades. So I think we had one last question. One and a half.
You mentioned that the tweet dress had a use case problem. And I wondered, what did you see as actually the practical use case? And I mean practical in the sense of being fashionable and being widely consumable. I know that there are things like the hug jacket, which might be the use of social media or the use of some sort of extra layer that you're putting into that clothing. But what do you see as the actual use case for this kind of fashion plus technology?
If I had that answer, I would be probably not sitting here right now. But
you will be sharing your wealth.
I'd be sharing my wealth. No. I think, okay, let's just go back. I think it's incredibly important to develop the tweet dress. I think it's incredibly important to develop the video dress, because to me, these are concepts that lead to this larger idea of programmable or downloadable garments that will change over time. I don't feel like we're going to be walking around dressed in light in that way. I think it'll be very different. I think it will be maybe textiles that do change patterns, but it won't be actually LEDs. So, and the thing with the tweet dress is it's a garment or something that you wear that enables you to communicate in real time with somebody else. That's the concept, and that's what it's done. I don't necessarily think right now the execution is what we have with our technology and our ecosystem becomes basically a tweet dress. The pebble could be the exact same, it's the same thing as a tweet dress conceptually. It's just sexier to make a dress, right? So that's sort of why every wearable technology concept ends up as a dress that someone can wear on a runway. So I think what you have to look at with these artistic expressions, these poetic expressions of things, is what they mean and what they're hinting at, which is we want an easier way, a more intimate way to communicate with people. And what is that execution as a product that is mass consumed? I don't quite know yet. Is it the smartwatch? Maybe. I mean, I don't quite know what that answer is. So, and I think we need to stop talking about wearable technology as one industry. It's not. There are multiple verticals. There's the medical industry. There's a gaming industry. There's a fashion industry. There's a consumer electronics industry. There's a slew of other industries that I'm not even mentioning. So, yeah, they're purpose-based. So it's like right now, it's like everything's a wearable and everything's in this one, as if it's one industry. It's not at all. The use cases are different, the way we design for them are different, and the context of the materials we would use in the medical industry, even in the fitness, are completely quite different, the price points, et cetera. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but.
May I tag into what you just said? They're both are, if you look at infant wear, if you look at the medical industry where telemetry is very important, and if you have a child that's ill, but let's just say a new parent who's 20-something, and they don't know a child may have something which they need to monitor at night. So they want something that's flexible, that's fashionable, that's affordable, and that presents the data that gives them, that they can react to, because it's all new to them. In this case, they would look for that.
Right.
Right. I will say doctors are terrified of all of you quantifying yourselves, right? It's like the old internet when you used to go to the doctor with the printout and say, now you go in with your data.
I think you get with the medicine sector is like the lawyers. The problem is they are living in, prehistoric times. I mean, the reality is the world is moving, and that's what we're talking about, adapting and interesting. At the end of the day, what you describe, you want to know and use this information for something. So the fact that you can collect your steps or your heart rate or so on. So if you go to review data, 65 million Americans, have actually conditions in their heart you don't know, but you need to know if you actually take the information and start analyzing. So maybe we move it that way. So for what he was asking on the simple push of a button, if you look at the cars, for example, cars today have one star button, but if you go historically, they were there because they were race cars. That was how they created. And so the point was just to press and put. We put together all the other technologies, the keys, the thing, the alarm, and then we complicated the whole stuff because they were there. So can we use that paradigm? Simplification. So
I think it's interesting. You're almost, I was just thinking, if you kind of distill it down to two extremes of almost the same use case. You talked about the heart. One extreme, you've almost got the heart condition. Am I alive? Am I well? Mm-hmm. And the other one, you've got emotion. Do I love someone? Am I thinking of them? And it's almost the two extremely opposite facets of the heart, right? And wearables have the bizarre capability to address both of them. So it can touch anything and everything. It can touch whatever we choose it to touch. And we're at the beginning of this journey, and we will find out where it leads us.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, I think we're going to, do we have one quick, we're 2 minutes over now, so why not?
I'll make it quick. What's your prediction in terms of the teenage market, in terms of early adopters within this industry, and do you think they're going to be key drivers to perpetuate and sort of stir things up within this market?
I gave you my take. I have 3 kids. They grew up with my, technologies for the last decade. They don't come from the analog world. So I think we have to train and help the digital generation to think about the innovations for digital generation. We are still using old paradigms. So to integrate, young kids, you need to let them build that dream from what they know, and then, try to connect what the past can help. I mean, that's my take, because the problem is we're still pushing with old models to use the technology. What is the new model?
One guy that couldn't make it here today, who should have been on the panel, is Adam Edelman from MightyCast, and you might want to look at his work. So he's got a modular bracelet for teens, where each module, they're tradable, and they also have different things. So one is a messenger, and one is one does, your fitness, and based on what you put in this modular bracelet, you can build a social network, as well as a fitness network, as well as a communications network. It's a really interesting concept. I think teens, it's going to be about the things they know: social networking, a little bit of bling, a lot of communicating, and a lot of status, where, it's just like Richard was saying, where depending on where you are in the continuum, what you want out of technology. I just want my GPS to tap me on the shoulder, so I'm not going like this all the time.
Or perhaps they don't want it anymore. Maybe that's the other choice. Maybe they say, I don't like this. Again, that's the whole point of exploring it.
Yeah, and to the big data, another thing you guys might want to look at, there's a shirt that measures air pollution. All right, it's one shirt with one person wearing air pollution, but when that's fed into the cloud, you now know which cities are the most polluted, and you start to be able to do something. So those are the kind of things that I think are really exciting. Last comments from my panelists? Angela?
No, please, Angela.
Well, I think what I find really interesting is with the technology is the ability for self-expression. And I think, because I'm sort of more from an artistic background, I think we've still got a ways to go, but I think the potential is definitely there.
Richard?
I think we've said it all. I mean, we're at the infancy of an industry that can go in a million directions. We just have to choose which ones are the 10 that people truly care about and deliver value to people in their lives.
It's a big world out there. So first, before I let you all go, can we just hear it for these wonderful panelists who've shared so much? Please join us back at 6 o'clock and really see what fashion has in store. And thank you so much for your time.